After my CEO husband fired me and divorced me, I told my assistant, fire every one of them. What would you do if the person you trusted most betrayed you at work and at home? Now let's begin. You are no longer my wife, and as of this morning, you are no longer employed here. Adrian Cole's voice carried across the 42nd floor boardroom with the smooth confidence of a man announcing quarterly earnings. Helena Cole stood at the far end of the polished walnut table, one hand resting beside a closed laptop, the other still holding the access badge she had used for 11 years. Through the glass walls behind her, Manhattan shone beneath a pale winter sky, cold and distant. Around the table sat 12 executives who had once praised her instincts, borrowed her strategies, and waited for her approval before making decisions. Now none of them met her eyes. Adrian remained at the head of the room in a charcoal suit, his silver cuff links catching the light each time he moved. Beside him sat Vanessa Pike, the newly promoted chief strategy officer, wearing the faint expression of someone trying not to smile too soon. Helena looked at the termination folder in front of her. The first page cited restructuring. The second claimed a conflict of interest. The third included a prepared public statement describing her departure as mutual. She read every line without changing her expression. You scheduled this before the board vote, she said. Adrian folded his hands. The board has already been briefed. Helena glanced around the room. Martin Shaw from finance studied the table. Elaine Porter from legal adjusted her glasses. Two division presidents whispered near the windows. Their silence answered more clearly than Adrian could. And the divorce? Helena asked. Adrian pushed a second folder toward her. Cream paper. Gold seal. His attorney's name in the corner. Filed this morning. For one brief second, the room became too quiet. Helena remembered the early years when Adrian worked from their kitchen table in a rented apartment in Queens, building presentations while she called investors from the hallway so he could concentrate. She remembered using her own inheritance to secure the company's first manufacturing contract. She remembered declining public credit because Adrian said one visible leader would make the brand stronger. Now the empire they had built together was being presented as his, and she was being removed from it like an outdated line item. You are taking this remarkably well, Vanessa said. Her tone was soft, but the satisfaction beneath it was not. Helena turned toward her. Vanessa's promotion letter lay beside Adrian's hand, already signed. Should I make a scene? Helena asked. Vanessa looked away first. Adrian leaned back. This does not need to become ugly. You will receive a generous settlement, provided you sign the confidentiality agreement and waive any claim to company leadership. Helena opened the final page. The settlement number was large enough to impress anyone who did not know what she had contributed. It was also less than 1/4 of the annual revenue from the international division she had built from nothing. You believe this company belongs to you, she said. Adrian's expression tightened. I am the chief executive officer. That was not my question. He stood, signaling that the meeting was over. Security will escort you to your office. You have 30 minutes to collect personal belongings. Helena closed both folders and placed her access badge on top of them. She did not sign anything. She walked past the executives without asking for an apology, gathering her coat from the back of a chair as the glass doors opened. Her assistant, Nora Bennett, waited outside with red eyes and a tablet held tightly against her chest. Mrs. Cole, Nora whispered. What do you want me to do? Helena looked back through the glass wall at Adrian, Vanessa, and the executives already rearranging themselves around the table as though she had never been there. Then she took a second phone from the inner pocket of her coat, entered a private passcode, and opened the ownership dashboard no one in that room knew she controlled. Her name appeared above 51% of Cole Meridian Holdings. Helena handed Nora the phone. Schedule an emergency shareholder meeting, she said. And do not tell them who called it. Helena did not return to her office. Instead, she walked past the security team waiting near the elevators and entered the private stairwell at the end of the corridor. Nora followed 2 steps behind, still holding the second phone with both hands as though it contained something fragile and dangerous. The stairwell was silent except for the distant hum of the building's ventilation system. Helena stopped on the landing between the 42nd and 41st floors, removed her wedding ring, and placed it inside the inner pocket of her coat. She did not look at it again. The shareholder meeting must happen before noon tomorrow, she said. Nora stared at the ownership dashboard. They think Mr. Cole controls the company. He controls the title. Helena adjusted the cuff of her coat. Titles and ownership are not the same thing. 11 years earlier, when Cole Meridian Holdings existed only as a borrowed office, 3 unpaid invoices, and Adrian's certainty, Helena had provided the capital no bank would risk. Her late father's family trust had purchased the original controlling shares through Northstar Equity Partners, a private entity created to keep her inheritance separate from the marriage. At Adrian's request, she had remained invisible. He said investors trusted a single founder more than a married pair. She had agreed because she believed protecting his confidence would protect their future. Over time, the company grew into a global technology and logistics empire. Adrian appeared on magazine covers. Helena built the international division, negotiated acquisitions, and quietly used Northstar's voting power whenever the company faced a hostile challenge. Only 3 people knew the full structure: Helena, Nora, and retired corporate attorney Samuel Voss. Adrian had never asked who prevented those challenges from succeeding. He preferred believing every victory belonged to him. Send the notice through Northstar's counsel. Helena continued. Request a complete review of today's termination vote, every executive appointment from the last 18 months, and every contract approved by Vanessa Pike. Nora's eyes widened. Every contract. Every one. They reached the private parking level, where Helena's black sedan waited beneath fluorescent lights. Before entering, Nora hesitated. Are you going home? Helena looked toward the elevator doors behind them. The penthouse on Park Avenue was registered in Adrian's name. The townhouse in Brooklyn, purchased before the marriage through her family trust, was not. No, she said. I am going somewhere that is still mine. Across town, Adrian returned to his corner office and poured sparkling water into a crystal glass. Vanessa stood near the windows, reading the prepared statement announcing Helena's resignation. The board wants this released before the market closes, she said. Adrian loosened his tie. Use the word transition. Resignation sounds unstable. Vanessa crossed out the sentence with a silver pen. Do you think she will fight the divorce? Helena hates public conflict. She also refused to sign. Adrian glanced toward the empty executive office across the hall. Helena's name had already been removed from the directory, but the faint outline of the letters remained on the glass. She will sign after her attorney explains the settlement, he said. She has no leverage here. At that moment, his computer screen changed. A formal notice appeared from Northstar Equity Partners requesting an emergency shareholder meeting. The document carried the authority of 51% of the voting shares. Adrian read the number twice. Vanessa stepped closer. Who is Northstar? He did not answer. His mind moved through years of board votes, last-minute financing approvals, and acquisitions that had cleared despite investor resistance. Northstar had always supported him. Its representatives never attended company events, never spoke to the press, and never asked for credit. Call legal, he said. Vanessa picked up the phone. What should I tell them? Adrian kept staring at the notice. Find out who controls Northstar. In Brooklyn, Helena entered the quiet townhouse and turned on a single lamp in the study. Nora placed the phone beside a stack of sealed corporate records. Samuel Voss was already waiting at the desk, silver-haired and composed, with the original shareholder agreement open before him. You are certain? He asked. Helena removed her coat and sat across from him. He fired me, filed for divorce, and appointed the people who helped him do it. Samuel looked down at the voting ledger. Then tomorrow's meeting will require more than removing Adrian. Helena opened the folder containing Vanessa's contracts and the board's approval records. I know. Her voice remained calm. That is why I asked for all of them. By 8 the next morning, the Brooklyn townhouse had become a quiet command center. Helena sat at the dining table in a cream blouse and dark tailored trousers, her hair pulled back from her face, while Nora arranged color-coded folders in precise rows. Samuel Voss stood near the window with a legal pad, reading aloud the names of every executive who had voted to remove Helena. Martin Shaw, Finance. Elaine Porter, Legal. Vanessa Pike, Strategy. 3 division presidents. 2 outside directors who had approved the process without reviewing the underlying ownership structure. Helena listened without interrupting. Northstar can remove them, Samuel said, but only if we establish cause or use the voting authority to replace the board. We have cause for some, Helena replied. For the rest, we have judgment. Nora looked up from the tablet. The meeting notice has been accepted. Adrian confirmed attendance. Samuel closed one file and opened another. He has also requested an emergency injunction to delay the vote. Helena's expression did not change. On what basis? He claims Northstar has acted in bad faith by concealing its beneficial owner. Helena looked toward the winter light beyond the windows. For years, concealment had been Adrian's preferred word whenever privacy protected him. Now that the same silence no longer served his power, he called it deception. The ownership structure was disclosed to company counsel at formation, she said. Every annual report lists Northstar correctly. He never asked who stood behind it. Samuel gave a faint nod. That is exactly the record. Across Manhattan, Adrian paced inside his office while Elaine Porter reviewed the shareholder agreement on a conference screen. Vanessa stood near the bar card, arms folded tightly. Northstar has the votes, Elaine said. Unless the court intervenes, they can replace the board today. Adrian stopped. Then find grounds. I have been looking since midnight. Elaine adjusted her glasses. The documents are valid. Vanessa stepped closer to the screen. Who controls Northstar? Elaine hesitated. The beneficial owner has requested confidentiality until the meeting. Adrian's frustration sharpened. You are company counsel, and the company must comply with the controlling shareholder. The words settled heavily. Adrian turned toward the glass wall overlooking the city. For years, those views had felt like proof that he had built something permanent. Now the office looked borrowed. At 11:45, black cars began arriving beneath Cole Meridian's headquarters. Directors entered through the private lobby. Outside counsel carried sealed boxes. Security received updated instructions from a firm Adrian did not recognize. At 11:58, Helena walked through the revolving doors with Nora on one side and Samuel on the other. She wore a deep navy coat over a tailored white suit, simple diamond earrings, and no wedding ring. Employees near reception fell silent. Some looked surprised. Others looked relieved. Helena did not slow. The executive elevator opened before she reached it, authorized by Northstar's credentials. On the 42nd floor, Adrian stood outside the boardroom with Vanessa and Elaine. His eyes moved immediately to Helena. You cannot be here, he said. Helena removed her gloves one finger at a time. I was invited. Vanessa looked toward Samuel. By whom? Nora stepped forward and handed Elaine a sealed ownership certificate. Elaine opened it, read the first page, and went still. Adrian watched her face. What is it? Elaine looked at Helena, then back at him. Northstar Equity Partners is controlled by the Helena Grace Whitmore Family Trust. Adrian's expression emptied. Helena's maiden name had not been spoken in that boardroom for more than a decade. That is impossible, he said. No, Helena replied. It was simply convenient for you not to know. The boardroom doors opened behind them. Inside, every seat was filled except the chair at the head of the table. Helena walked past Adrian and entered without waiting for permission. She placed the ownership certificate in front of the empty chair, then sat down. Nora took her place along the wall with the prepared resolutions. Samuel remained beside the door. Adrian entered last, no longer leading the room he had once controlled. Helena looked around the table at the executives who had watched her dismissal in silence less than 24 hours earlier. Before we begin, she said, I want each of you to understand that today is not about revenge. It is about whether this company can survive the people who mistook loyalty for weakness. Helena waited until every person in the boardroom had taken a seat before she opened the first resolution. No one spoke. Adrian sat 3 chairs away, close enough to watch her, but no longer close enough to influence what she would do. Vanessa remained beside him with a legal folder pressed flat against the table, her earlier confidence replaced by careful stillness. Elaine Porter sat across from Helena, reading the ownership certificate again as though the language might change. The first matter is the legality of yesterday's termination vote, Helena said. Samuel distributed copies of the original shareholder agreement and the company bylaws. Under Section 8, any removal of an executive who also represents the controlling shareholder requires written notice to that shareholder before the vote. Elaine looked down at the page. Northstar received no notice. Helena nodded, which means the vote was defective. Martin Shaw from Finance cleared his throat. The board acted on the information available. The information was available, Helena replied. You chose not to verify it. She turned to Nora. Read the attendance record. Nora opened the tablet. 12 directors were present. 9 voted in favor. 2 abstained. 1 was absent. No representative of North Star Equity Partners was notified. The room absorbed each detail slowly. Adrian leaned forward. This is procedural. It can be corrected. Helena looked at him. So can a resignation letter. That does not make the pressure behind it acceptable. She opened the second resolution. The next matter concerns executive appointments and contract approvals during the last 18 months. Vanessa's fingers tightened around her folder. Samuel placed a stack of documents in front of the directors. The first showed consulting payments routed through Pike Advisory Group, a firm owned by Vanessa's brother. The second showed vendor contracts approved without competitive review. The third showed a retention package granting Vanessa accelerated compensation if Helena left the company. This package was approved 6 weeks ago, Helena said. Before my termination. Before the divorce filing. Vanessa's face lost color. That package was intended to protect executive continuity. Whose continuity? Helena asked. Vanessa looked toward Adrian, but he did not meet her eyes. Martin turned another page. These payments exceed $6 million. Over 21 months, Samuel said. All approved under Adrian's delegated authority. Adrian's voice hardened. You are implying misconduct where there was none. Helena did not raise hers. I am presenting records. The implications belong to the people who created them. Elaine removed her glasses. The conflict disclosures are incomplete. Vanessa turned toward her. Legal reviewed every contract. Legal reviewed summaries, Elaine said. Not beneficial ownership. The division presidents began whispering. Helena waited until the sound stopped. Then she opened a final folder containing performance reports, employee complaints, and internal messages. Several executives had discussed Helena's removal as a chance to simplify leadership. One had called her influence decorative. Another had written that Adrian would be easier to manage once the marriage ended. Helena read none of the messages aloud. She did not need to. She placed them in the center of the table. You were not removing a conflict, she said. You were removing the person who kept asking why. Adrian stared at the folder. What do you want? Helena looked around the room. That question had followed her for years, usually after everyone else had already taken what they wanted. This time, the answer was simple. An independent audit. Immediate suspension of all contracts connected to undisclosed personal relationships. Resignation of every director who approved my termination without notice to the controlling shareholder. One outside director shifted uncomfortably. That is excessive. Helena turned toward him. You voted to remove me in less than 10 minutes. He said nothing. Samuel read the voting thresholds. North Star's 51% was enough to pass every resolution. One by one, the directors signed acknowledgments. Some looked ashamed. Others only frightened. Adrian watched the process with the expression of a man seeing the machinery of power from the outside for the first time. In my position? He asked. Helena closed the folder in front of her. You remain chief executive officer until the audit is complete. Relief appeared in his face too quickly. Helena continued. You will have no authority over personnel, contracts, finance, or legal decisions during that period. The relief vanished. She looked toward Nora. Prepare the suspension notices. Nora opened a new file. For whom? Helena glanced at Vanessa, Martin, the outside directors, and every executive who had turned silence into permission. Her voice remained quiet. Start with everyone who believed loyalty made me disposable. The suspension notices were delivered before the boardroom doors reopened. Nora moved from seat to seat with a black folder for each executive, her expression steady despite the tension pressing against the glass walls. Vanessa received hers first. She read the opening line, then looked at Adrian as though he might still reverse it. He could not. Martin Shaw from finance stared at his notice without touching it. The two outside directors who had called Helena's demands excessive began asking Samuel whether resignation would protect their reputations. Samuel answered each question with the same calm precision. The audit would determine responsibility, not the wording of their departure. Helena remained at the head of the table, watching the people who had treated her silence as weakness discover that consequences did not require raised voices. This is retaliation, Vanessa said at last. Helena looked at her. Retaliation would be removing you because I dislike you. You were suspended because your family business received $6 million in undisclosed contracts. Adrian approved them. The room turned toward him. Adrian's face tightened. They were legitimate consulting services. Then the audit will confirm that, Helena said. Vanessa pressed the folder closed. You planned this. You planned my removal 6 weeks before yesterday's vote. Vanessa stopped speaking. The elevators were restricted while security collected company devices and access cards. No one was escorted publicly through the lobby. Helena had refused that spectacle. She wanted records preserved, not humiliation performed. By 2 in the afternoon, the executive floor had become unusually quiet. Office doors stood open. Assistants whispered near the copy room. The company directory began changing one name at a time. Helena returned to the office that had been emptied for her successor. Her framed photographs were gone, her books packed into storage boxes, and Vanessa's preferred artwork leaned against the wall waiting to be installed. Nora stood in the doorway. Facilities can restore everything. Helena ran one hand across the empty desk. Not everything should be restored. On the credenza, someone had left the silver pen Vanessa used to edit Helena's resignation statement. Helena picked it up, examined it, then placed it inside the top drawer. Bring me the International Division reports, she said. The current ones, not the summaries. Nora hesitated. You are going back to work today? The company does not stop needing leadership because the board lost its judgment. At 4:30, the first audit findings arrived. 3 regional divisions had delayed vendor payments to protect quarterly margins. Employee benefit reductions had been approved without full board review. A warehouse modernization contract had been awarded to another firm connected to Martin's family. Helena read each page without surprise. The pattern was not a single betrayal. It was a culture built around the belief that proximity to Adrian excused accountability. She called the operations team, restored the delayed payments, froze the questionable contracts, and ordered an independent review of employee benefits. Outside her office, staff began receiving notifications that decisions made in the last 90 days were being reconsidered. Some employees looked relieved. Others looked frightened. Helena understood both reactions. Power used carelessly made even good news feel temporary. Adrian entered just after sunset without knocking. His tie was gone, and the confidence he wore so easily in public had thinned into exhaustion. He closed the door behind him. You suspended half the executive team in one afternoon. Helena continued reading. 5 people are not half the company. They are the people who know how to run it. She looked up. They are the people who learned how to run it without being questioned. Adrian walked to the window. Below them, Manhattan moved through the early evening as if nothing inside the tower had changed. You could have told me about North Star years ago. You signed the shareholder agreement. I trusted you. Helena held his gaze. You trusted that my support would remain invisible. He turned away. Vanessa says you are trying to destroy me. Vanessa says whatever keeps her closest to authority. Adrian looked back sharply. And what do you say? Helena closed the report. I say the audit decides whether you remain chief executive officer. He stepped closer to the desk. I built this company. We built it, she said. You were simply the only one whose name appeared in the photographs. For the first time, Adrian had no immediate answer. Helena opened a new folder containing the original funding records, her signatures appearing beneath the first contracts, loan guarantees, and acquisition approvals. Tomorrow, she said, you will explain to the independent committee why you fired the person who financed the company, built its strongest division, and controlled its voting shares. Adrian looked at the documents, then at her. And if they remove me? Helena's expression remained calm. Then you will leave through the same doors you expected me to walk through quietly. The independent committee convened at 9 the next morning in a smaller conference room without city views, executive portraits, or the polished theater Adrian usually preferred. Helena chose the room because nothing inside it could distract from the records. Samuel Voss sat at one end with 3 outside directors who had not participated in her termination. Nora occupied a side table with the audit files arranged by subject: personnel, contracts, governance, and finance. Adrian entered alone. His suit was immaculate, but the night had left shadows beneath his eyes. He took the chair opposite Helena and placed both hands on the table. Let us begin with the termination process, Samuel said. Adrian looked directly at Helena. The board believed her position created instability. Helena did not react. One committee member opened the meeting minutes. The record shows no performance review, no written warning, and no notice to the controlling shareholder. The circumstances required speed, Adrian replied. What circumstances? Another member asked. Adrian paused. The silence exposed the answer before he gave it. Her influence had become difficult to separate from our personal conflict. Helena finally spoke. You filed for divorce the same morning. Adrian's eyes shifted toward her. The marriage had been failing for months. Then why did you approve Vanessa Pike's retention package 6 weeks earlier? Nora placed the agreement on the table. The accelerated compensation triggered only if Helena left the company. Adrian looked at the signature page. Vanessa was essential to continuity. Continuity after an event you claim was not planned? Helena asked. He leaned back. You are interpreting ordinary preparation as conspiracy. Samuel opened the contract file. Then explain why Pike Advisory Group received $6 million without competitive bids, why beneficial ownership was omitted from legal review, and why the board summaries were prepared by Vanessa herself. Adrian's control slipped for the first time. Those contracts produced results. That was not the question, Helena said. The committee continued for 2 hours. Each answer led to another document. Each justification weakened under its own dates. Adrian insisted he had protected the company. The records showed he had protected a circle of people who praised him, approved him, and never required him to explain himself. When the finance review began, Nora displayed the international division figures. Helena's division had generated 38% of total operating profit the previous year. Adrian had described her as replaceable while depending on the systems she built to keep the company stable. One director looked at him across the table. Why was this not included in the board packet before her removal? Adrian glanced toward the empty chair where Martin Shaw would normally have Saturday. Finance prepared the materials. You approved them, Helena said. He turned to her. You want me to admit I made a mistake? Her expression remained composed. A mistake is signing the wrong page. You planned this for 6 weeks. The committee adjourned shortly after noon. Adrian was asked to wait outside while the directors considered the evidence. He stood in the corridor beside the glass wall, no assistant, no legal team, no one carrying his folders. Inside, the vote took less than 20 minutes. When the door reopened, Samuel invited him back. Adrian returned to the same chair and looked at Helena before anyone spoke. The committee has concluded that your actions represented a serious failure of governance, Samuel said. Effective immediately, you are removed as Chief Executive Officer. Adrian's face remained still, but his hands tightened together. On whose authority? Helena placed the signed resolution on the table. The controlling shareholder and the independent committee. He looked at her. You are taking my company. No, she said. I am stopping you from treating it as personal property. Samuel continued. Adrian would retain his vested shares, lose all operational authority, and remain subject to the audit. A transition team would assume control by the end of the day. Adrian listened without interruption. When the final page was placed before him, he did not touch the pen. Who replaces me? He asked. Helena turned toward Nora. The board will appoint an interim chief executive officer this afternoon. Adrian followed her gaze, expecting another name. Nora opened a black folder and waited. Helena looked around the room, then spoke with the calm certainty Adrian had once mistaken for surrender. Before any appointment, remove every executive who participated in concealed contracts, defective votes, or retaliatory planning. Nora's hand moved to the prepared list. All of them. Helena held Adrian's eyes. Every one of them. By 3 that afternoon, the names disappeared from the company directory one by one. Vanessa Pike's access was revoked first. Martin Shaw followed, then the outside directors who had approved the defective vote, then the division leaders who had helped prepare Helena's removal while concealing conflicts of interest. Nora carried out each instruction with the same quiet precision she had used for 11 years, but now the entire executive floor understood who she answered to. Helena remained in the boardroom with the transition team, reviewing department reports while the consequences moved through the building without spectacle. No one was marched past employees. No public statement used the language of disgrace. Devices were collected, contracts were frozen, and legal notices were delivered privately. Helena had no interest in creating the humiliation they had planned for her. She wanted the company protected from the habits they had normalized. Through the glass wall, she saw Vanessa standing outside her former office with a banker box in her arms. The woman who had once corrected Helena's resignation statement with a silver pin now waited for an elevator that would not open without security authorization. Vanessa turned and saw Helena watching. For a moment, anger rose in her face. Then it gave way to something less certain. She crossed the corridor and stopped at the boardroom door. "You could have kept me," she said. Helena looked up from the audit summary. "Why would I?" "Because I know every strategic account Adrian has. You also knew the termination vote was defective." Vanessa shifted the box against her hip. "I knew the board wanted you gone. And you helped them. I did what was necessary to survive." Helena closed the report. That is what people say when they want ambition to sound unavoidable. Vanessa's mouth tightened. "You think you are different?" Helena glanced toward the city beyond the windows. "I think survival that requires making someone else disposable is only another form of fear." Security arrived quietly. Vanessa left without another word. Adrian remained in his former office until sunset, surrounded by framed magazine covers and awards that still carried his name. The transition team had taken control of his calendar, accounts, and internal communications. For the first time since the company's founding, he had no decision waiting for his approval. Helena entered without knocking. He stood near the windows, his jacket folded across a chair. "They are all gone," he said. "The ones connected to the misconduct are gone. You removed everyone who supported me. I removed everyone who confused supporting you with protecting themselves." Adrian turned toward her. "And what happens now?" Helena placed a document on the desk. "The interim leadership team begins tomorrow. Operations will be led by Grace Lynn. Finance goes to Daniel Brooks until the audit closes. Elaine remains as general counsel under independent supervision because she corrected the record when it mattered." Adrian looked at the names. "You are not taking the chief executive role." "Not yet." "Why?" Helena met his eyes. "Because I do not need the title to prove I own the room." The answer unsettled him more than anger would have. He walked toward the desk and touched the edge of the document. "You planned this better than I planned your removal." "No," she said. "I prepared for the possibility that trust might fail. You prepared for the certainty that I would remain silent." Adrian looked down. "Was there ever a moment when you thought about stopping this?" Helena's expression softened, but not enough to become forgiveness. "There were many moments when I thought about saving you from your own choices. That is what I did for years." He looked at her wedding ring finger. "And now I am done confusing rescue with love." A quiet knock sounded at the door. Nora stood outside holding the revised public statement. Helena read it once. It announced governance changes, an independent audit, and a temporary leadership transition. It did not mention the divorce. It did not mention betrayal. It did not turn a private wound into corporate theater. "Release it," Helena said. Nora nodded, then glanced toward Adrian. "Is there anything else?" Helena looked around the office at the photographs, the awards, and the skyline Adrian had mistaken for proof that nothing could reach him. "Yes," she said. "Remove every portrait that suggests one man built this company alone." The next morning, the executive floor looked unfamiliar without Adrian's portraits. Pale rectangles remained on the walls where magazine covers and framed awards had hung for years. Facilities workers carried the last oversized photograph toward the service elevator while employees passed quietly beneath the empty spaces. Helena walked through the corridor with Nora beside her, reviewing the first day of the transition. Grace Lynn had already gathered operations. Daniel Brooks was rebuilding the finance approval chain. Elaine Porter had opened an independent reporting line for employees who feared retaliation. Nothing about the building looked dramatic, yet every decision now moved through a different center of gravity. In Helena's restored office, the desk remained nearly bare. She had returned only 3 objects: her father's fountain pen, a framed photograph of the first warehouse the company had leased in Queens, and a small brass compass Adrian once gave her before their first international expansion. She kept the compass not because of him, but because she remembered who she had been when she received it. Nora placed a sealed envelope on the desk. The revised divorce proposal arrived. Helena opened it. Adrian had withdrawn the demand that she waive claims to company leadership. He no longer described the separation as mutual. The new agreement divided personal property, preserved each person's separate assets, and included a request for one private meeting before final signatures. Helena read the last line twice, then closed the folder. "Schedule 30 minutes, she said. "Here?" Nora asked. Helena looked around the office. "No, somewhere neither of us owns." They met that evening in a quiet hotel lounge near Central Park. Adrian arrived first and chose a table by the window. He wore a dark coat over an open-collar shirt, without the polished armor of his former role. Helena sat across from him, placing the divorce papers between them. For several seconds, neither spoke. Outside, yellow taxis moved through the rain. "The company's statement was generous," Adrian said. "It was accurate. You could have named me. I did not need to." He looked down at his hands. "Vanessa says the audit will ruin her career. Vanessa's choices will decide that. And mine." Helena held his gaze. "The same." Adrian leaned back. "I keep thinking about the first office. The one above the print shop." Helena remembered the crooked radiator, the ceiling that leaked over the filing cabinet, and the nights they shared one takeout meal because payroll came first. "You used to say we were building something together," he continued. "We were. Then when did it stop being ours?" Helena looked toward the rain sliding down the glass. "When you started treating my sacrifice as evidence that I needed less." Adrian's face tightened, not in anger, but recognition. "I thought you wanted to stay behind the scenes. I wanted the company to survive. You decided that meant I did not need to be seen." He turned the divorce agreement toward himself. "If I had known about North Star, none of this would have happened." Helena's expression remained still. "That is not an apology. It is the truth." "No. It means you would have treated me differently if you knew I had the power to stop you." Adrian did not answer. The silence confirmed what she already understood. He had not mistaken her worth. He had mistaken her position. Helena removed the brass compass from her handbag and placed it on the table. Adrian looked at it with surprise. "You kept that." "It reminded me that direction matters more than speed." She slid it toward him. "You should have it now." He touched the edge but did not pick it up. "Is there any version of this where we start again?" Helena looked at the man she had once loved enough to make herself invisible beside him. There was still sadness in her, but no uncertainty. "You do not want to start again," she said. "You want to return to the moment before consequences." Adrian lowered his eyes. Helena signed the final page with her father's fountain pen. Then she stood, buttoned her coat, and left the agreement in front of him. At the door, she paused only long enough to say, "The company will recover. I will recover. What happens to you depends on whether you finally learn the difference between being supported and being entitled." 6 months later, Cole Meridian Holdings opened its annual leadership conference in the same 42nd floor boardroom where Helena had once been dismissed. The walnut table remained, but the room no longer revolved around a single chair. Department leaders sat beside employee representatives, regional directors, and independent auditors. On the wall, the company history displayed photographs of warehouse crews, engineers, assistants, early investors, and the first international team. No portrait stood larger than the others. Helena entered with Nora carrying the final audit report. She wore a tailored ivory suit, simple diamond earrings, and her father's fountain pen clipped inside the folder. Conversations quieted, not from fear, but attention. Grace Lynn rose from the interim chief executive officer's seat and handed Helena the agenda. "The board is ready," she said. Helena looked around the room. The company had survived the leadership removals, restored delayed vendor payments, reversed the employee benefit cuts, and recovered 2 major accounts that Adrian's inner circle had nearly lost. Revenue had steadied. Staff turnover had fallen. More important to Helena, people had begun raising concerns before problems became crises. The audit report named every failure without turning any person into entertainment. Vanessa's undisclosed contracts had been canceled. Martin's related party agreements had been referred for civil review. The former directors had resigned. Adrian had repaid compensation tied to defective approvals and agreed to surrender his remaining board influence as part of the final settlement. Helena opened the meeting. "This company did not need one hero," she said. "It needed fewer people pretending they were above the rules." No one applauded immediately. Then Grace did, followed by Nora, then the rest of the room. Helena allowed the sound to rise and fade before returning to the agenda. The board voted unanimously to appoint Grace as permanent chief executive officer. Helena accepted the position of executive chair, retaining strategic oversight without rebuilding the same structure that had failed them. After the meeting, employees gathered in the lobby for the unveiling of a new company display. At its center was the original photograph of the rented Queen's office above the print shop. Beneath it were two signatures on the first funding agreement, Adrian Cole and Helena Grace Whitmore. Helena stood before the glass case while Nora joined her. "They finally spelled your full name correctly," Nora said. Helena smiled. "That is progress." Nora held out a small envelope. The divorce decree was finalized this morning. Helena opened it and read the official line confirming the marriage had ended. There was no dramatic feeling, only a quiet release, like setting down something she had carried long after it stopped belonging to her. She folded the decree and returned it to the envelope. "Any message from Adrian?" she asked. "One." Nora handed her a card. Adrian had written only that he now understood why she never needed to raise her voice. Helena read the sentence, then placed the card inside the envelope without replying. That evening, she returned to the Brooklyn townhouse. The rooms no longer felt like a retreat from another life. They felt like home. She opened the study windows to the spring air and placed the divorce decree inside a locked drawer beside the old brass compass. She had not taken the compass back from the hotel. Adrian had mailed it to her weeks later with no